choose to allow that into my experience, but knowing that in that moment I am perfect and I am whole and I am complete, and that whatever the transmission that is coming through is coming from the utmost place of authenticity in that moment, and that it will strike a chord or a resonance, or will be in resonance with the exact right people who are meant to hear this message at any given moment in time, and that they will be activated to reclaim more of their magic as a result of receiving this conversation, which will in turn allow them to be more embodied in their message and more embodied in their leadership.
Welcome back to the Rebel Reality Podcast. I'm your host, Erica Lester, and this is the show where we pull back the curtains on what we've been taught to believe about life, love, and the world we live in, so that we can live a life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside, and do our part to make the world a better place. Today, we're here with my dear friend and mentor, Tammy McKenzie, and I'm super excited because I know that the conversation that's about to unfold is going to be epic and fun. Of course. So Tammy, thank you so much for being here. It really is really important to me to just create an experience and open the doors to share the magic that I've been lucky enough to experience in my own life with other people. And so I really appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm so excited.
So good. So good. So I would love it for people who don't know you, or maybe don't know the iteration of you that is today, if you could share with us who you are, what you're doing in the world, whatever feels really, really good to share.
I'm going to introduce myself in a completely new way to what I have before in the past. And I am a mother. I think first and foremost, I'm a woman. I am somebody who really believes that I am here to help anchor in the new paradigm of motherhood, whether that is for women who actually have children or wants to have children, or actually just birthing creations that are going to positively affect humanity for generations to come. Like, I am a stand for women and mothers having it all. And I think in the past I've been a little bit disconnected from actually owning that I am a mother, and owning that I am a sensual being, an essential woman, and owning that, I'm a woman who desires to live in her own financial sovereignty and make a lot of money, not just for money's sake, but for the sake of making a positive contribution to humanity. And I'm also a mother who stands for living in your purpose and sharing in your sharing your calling and your passion for your work, with the world. And I guess what that truly means to me is that I stand for women and mothers stepping into their power, stepping into their purpose, stepping into their leadership, embracing their desire to have it all and to be the embodiment of it all, and to actually be the embodiment of their message, and be the embodiment and to live in actual alignment with their values and what's important to them. So that is who I am, and what I do, I guess, is the more that I embody my message, the more that I stand as a leader and fully expressed in the truth and core essence of who I am, the more I am able to contribute my growth to humanity, and the more that I'm able to attract people who are stepping into those, the exact right people who are called to my vibration to step into their next layer of growth and their next layer of evolution, so that they can embody that and then step up into more contribution. And so this ripple effect really spirals out. So I really believe that, what I do is I activate the voice of mothers so that they can truly be liberated, in life, in love, in leadership, in their financial sovereignty, in, living the life of their dreams that truly feels as, that looks, feels as good as on the inside for them as it looks on the outside. And am I allowed to swear?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I actually, I don't fucking care what people's life looks like on the outside. Like, I'm starting to not give a fuck more and more about what people think of what my life looks on the outside, because it's my life, it's our life. And so I believe that we get to drop these masks that we've been conditioned to take on, and come back to the natural essence of who we are at our core, as you would refer to it, our soul self, so that we continuously get, activated in those layers. I could go into all of the degrees and all of the certifications and, all of the years as a health professional and chiropractor, but I don't feel that they're relevant necessarily. I feel like they're just they're aspects of what I've studied or what I've learned, in order to come back to this place of like, this is what I stand for in humanity.
I love that so much. And there is like so much goodness to unpack there. And I think it's important to me to highlight the fact that like even the even the choice to not list out the degrees or list out the certifications, right, is really a stand for what this show is about. And that is that you don't have to or need to have the validation or have the creation or have the follow the life path that society has told us we have to in order to be who we are. And it doesn't mean that our journey wasn't important, right? And it doesn't mean that the degrees and the certifications and the knowledge that you have aren't important. It means that we get to, and one of the things I love most about you and working with you and being around you is just this full idea that really just being ourselves is enough. Like being who we are really truly is enough.
Yeah. And, I'll be the first to admit I'm still remembering that, like there's layers to this. And what I'm understanding and what I'm remembering is that the more that I actually allow myself to receive wholeheartedly, like my feelings of whatever is happening in that moment, without making it right or wrong or putting judgment on it, the more that unlocks all of this, these deeper layers within myself, that then allow me to be more of who I actually am, and allow me to stand, true to myself, and, certain and powerful in that truth, without needing to take away from anyone else's experience. I can literally just be all of who I can be, and have the capacity to be in that moment, knowing that always more is available if I choose to allow that into my experience, but knowing that in that moment I am perfect and I am whole and I am complete, and that whatever the transmission that is coming through is coming from the utmost place of authenticity in that moment, and that it will strike a chord or a resonance, or will be in resonance with the exact right people who are meant to hear this message at any given moment in time, and that they will be activated to reclaim more of their magic as a result of receiving this conversation, which will in turn allow them to be more embodied in their message and more embodied in their leadership, whatever that means, like across whatever multi-dimensional facet of your life, you choose to embody your leadership in, because not everyone is called to speak on stages. For some people, for some mothers, for some women, speaking on stage might actually be them being the best mother that they can be. Or it might be like their family is their stage, And so I feel like the more we allow ourselves just the gift of being ourselves, and allowing ourselves to understand who we are and what makes us tick, and all of these different things, which is why I have all of these degrees and certifications, and all of these different labels that I could use, have been so pivotal to my journey in remembering that, because every different thing, or every different degree or qualification or certification or diploma or whatever the weekend course or whatever the thing has been, has activated another layer of remembering within myself. And it's taken me so long, but at the same time, no time at all, to truly get to understanding that it doesn't matter. You can know nothing and everything at the same time.
And it's okay.
And it's okay.
This is such an important conversation. And I have it's interesting to me to have this conversation, knowing that in terms of motherhood, we're at two different points in the experience, right? Like my children are adults and your son is still pretty young, right? And it's interesting to me because I I think the work that you're doing is so important. And of course, it's not, like you said in the beginning, it's not just about women who are actual mothers of little human children, right? But in terms of people who really are on that particular motherhood journey, it's it's one of the things that I think is so important for us in terms of shifting the conversation and allowing people to really be who they are. Because from my perspective, where I'm at now, and I'm lucky to have two amazingly beautiful daughters who are now both in their 20s. And I spent a majority of their life doing what society told me I should do because I was a mother, and hiding certain aspects of myself or denying certain aspects of myself and trying to step into this like role of motherhood that I saw around me. Even though to look at me from the outside, I was not necessarily ever like the quote unquote normal like soccer mom who, I've always had tattoos. I've always, like done things a little bit differently, but I was still trying to fit a certain mold when it came to motherhood and how I raised my children. And in hindsight, of course, the journey is always perfect and I wouldn't change a thing. And my kids are amazing. But in hindsight, what I was actually doing and what I realize now was actually teaching them that they couldn't be the full embodiment of who they were, that they had to be something that society told them that they needed to be, simply by choosing to believe that about myself and choosing to not be the full expression of who I was, because as we know, right, children do what we do, not what we say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They mimic who we be,
Yeah.
I think is the truth. And it's fast. My son, as of the time of recording this, is, what did we work out the other day? He's 6 and 10 and a half twelfths. So he's more than 6 3/4, which is
It's
very,
important.
it's very important, apparently. So he's 6 and 10 and a half twelfths. And he really has taught, like, I don't like to say like my child's my teacher necessarily, or my guide, because I believe that's, putting him on a pedestal or giving him roles and responsibilities that he doesn't need as a child. But what he has done, and what I will, wholeheartedly give his existence credit for, is that he has allowed me to see some of the deepest parts of myself, and through allowing myself to see myself through his eyes, or what gets triggered or activated through being in his presence, I have been able to activate different parts of me that essentially had been dormant. A lot of the playfulness and the lightheartedness and the giggliness, and allowing myself actually just to be, rather than having to be the serious sausage who was constantly stressed and having to do all this time. Those parts, I believe, have been accelerated to come online, so to speak, because of being able to be present and receive him where he was at, and knowing that the parts of myself that were getting completely triggered through being in his presence, or through wanting to like rush him onto another thing, or tick off my task list, or just a minute, like mummy's doing this, or just a minute, I'm busy doing this, or not allowing him the gift of going through multiple failures to pick himself back up, and really, to understand that the more we practice, the better we get, and the more we allow ourselves to experience things, the easier and more natural it becomes. Like, those are some of the gifts that I've really received through him. And I'm separated from Ollie's, my 6 and 10 and a half and 10 and a half twelfths child from his father. And that has brought up so much in terms of itself, in terms of letting go of layers of control and letting go of layers of attachment, and being willing to, as a mother, like, there's this part of us that loves so big that we don't know how we could possibly have the capacity to love that big. And I also believe that there's this part of us as mothers that often creates these codependent patterns, because it's almost like we need to be needed. And so, like, who are we if we're not needed? And so I also believe that, motherhood, and of course all relationships, give us this opportunity to see ourselves, but and to look at the roles that we might be playing out, and the patterns and the programs and the scarcity loops, and all of these different things that might actually be limiting us from being the fullest expression of who we really are. So I believe motherhood's a massive gift. And I also believe, you don't have to have a physical child in order to, experience these things. But for me, that's really been such an awakener and such an activator. I'm sure that without having had Ollie, I would have come back to the truth of my body fully. But I needed, for me, because I was in this place of like needing to have things be so bad or so difficult before I would look at them, or be so much pain. I don't know if I would have come back to this place without having experienced some of the physical things that I did, that actually made me look deeper at the layers or why they were happening, and then actually kind of brought me, back to my body, which then brings us back to our inner wisdom and the gifts and the intuitive knowing that's always within us, and it always has been and it always will be, and tapping back into that and really being able to feel that resonance and feel that coherence across all of the different layers of our bodies, rather than just at a mental level, or rather than just getting lost in the emotions that might be coming through us. So there's such gifts, whatever the experience is. And I feel like I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but for me, like, that willingness to be willing to lose it all actually opens up my heart to being able to be more present and more connected. And that then like dissolves the layers of neediness or attachment, and then there's just more love and more connection and more fun and spontaneity. So it's this interesting balance as a mother and as any human, in terms of like having clear standards for yourself, having clear standards of toleration, having clear boundaries and parameters that you're working within, and also allowing a child or a project that you might be creating or birthing through you into dependency, without like controlling or micromanaging every little bit of their experience or every little bit of their of their day. Yes, they might need to have their clothes on to go to school, but how they put those clothes on is really up to them.
Or what clothes they wear.
Or what clothes they wear. And I might look at them and be like, you could do this so much faster and so much simpler. But he wants to do it his way. So who am I to stifle that expression?
Yeah, and I think we are taught, right? Like, or maybe it comes from fear. I don't know. There's a lot. I think there's a lot of things we could go into around the control and like where that comes from. But I do truly believe, like in my experience at least, and this was true of motherhood for me as well, that like the fear, because when you were talking about like loving so big, I didn't know a love that deep until I had my first child, right? And it scared the shit out of me. It was like this idea that like if something were to happen to her, or I somehow failed her, that would be the end of the world for me, because I loved her
Mm.
so much. And of course, I feel that way about both my children. It's just I didn't realize you could love something that much until I experienced motherhood. For me, that was like someone had just crazy turned up the volume on my life and how important it suddenly was. And it instilled in me this like deep sense of fear of failing, of having something happen to her. And because of where I was at the time, and because of the journey, as it was then, that fear actually led me into deeper patterns of control and really wanting to like do everything I could to make sure she was safe and to make sure
Mm.
she was well cared for. And it actually ended up backfiring because then later on down the road, if you fast forward, I actually ended up completely stressed out, right? Not present because I'd built this like cycle of being in fear. So trying to create safety. And at the time, safety to me meant like being able to take care of them financially and making sure they had what they wanted and they could go to good schools and we lived in a good neighborhood and all of that stuff, right? And I'm not discounting any of that. What I'm saying really long-windedly is that it actually put me into, or I went into this cycle of control trying to make sure that they were safe and taken care of. And it's interesting looking back now, like reflecting on it now and recognizing that it meant that I wasn't present a lot of the time, like fully present with them.
Yes.
And it's interesting to see like what fear can really do in terms of if we let it control us and if we start buying into a lot of the fear that's propagated in our society and that we're taught, and a lot of the pressure that's put on parents in general to make sure their kids are okay, and a lot of the judgment that comes through parenthood around, God forbid something did happen to your child, or God forbid, you couldn't keep a roof over their head. The amount of judgment that comes with failing your children is like insane.
Yeah. Which then means we become slaves to our children. And I realize that even using that word right now may not be the most socially appropriate thing. However, I feel and I do believe that oftentimes we're often making decisions as parents from this place of wanting our children to have a better experience than we had, or wanting our children to have more than we have, or not wanting to repeat the mistakes of our parents potentially. And so, therefore, the entire frequency and foundations and paradigm that we enter into parenthood from is actually coming from the wrong frequency, because it's actually founded in fear, force, and control, which is coming from this place of the sympathetic part of our nervous system, which means that we're not able to feel safe. And then we're parenting from that place rather than this place of like, what does parenthood look like for me? Like, who am I at, who am I at my natural core essence? What do I understand about myself? What's important to me as a human? Like, what are my values? What are my values as a parent? What do I want to, I guess, instill, or I guess want my child to know? And of course, knowing that their soul has chosen the exact perfect experience through choosing us as their parents or their guides. But to give them, for me, I'm like, okay, well, how do I be a guide and help Ollie come to his own understanding of what his values are, of what's important to him versus what's important to me, whilst also helping him understand that there are fundamental requirements that we do have to be healthy, and that we do have, in order to thrive and in order to be our most vibrant selves. And so what I started to realize not that long ago really was that a lot of my decisions as a parent and a mother were actually coming from fear, and they were not actually coming from love. They were coming from this place of, what will people think, and who am I to do this, and not wanting to have Ollie see, maybe some of the things that I got to experience and feel as a child. And so therefore that was me trying to protect him and me trying to control his experience, rather than just coming back into this place of being fully grounded and anchored in love and connection and certainty and trust and acceptance within myself, and knowing that that opens up a space to feel more and to be more connected, and it can feel really scary and really intense and really full on when we've got all these fears and loops and programs and thoughts and, mind stuff going on in the background, because we're so stuck in the place of like, what if something bad happens, or what if something negative happens, versus, well, actually, what if like magic happens? Like, what if you trusting your soul, or you trusting your intuition, even though it may come with judgment or perception or projection from the external world, is actually going to create complete magic, deeper connection, more love, more abundance, more vitality, more of all of these things. And so to be able to dissolve like our need to be accepted based on somebody else's paradigm or perspective of the world, and simply be willing to be ourselves in all of our messy, beautiful authenticity, is, I believe, one of the most liberating gifts we can give ourselves, but also that we can give our children. And it requires a deep level of receiving within ourselves to actually feel whatever feelings or emotions or sensations are coming through us, without rejecting them, without making them wrong. And therefore that flows into every other part of our life as well. And most of us are in rejection of actually receiving. We say, like, as I know you've got so many business owners or people that are wanting to make a massive difference in the world, or desiring to create more financial abundance so that they can contribute more, and so many different beautiful visions that they want to bring to life. At the heart of all of that is receiving. And it's also one of the hardest things that one of the things that I see most mothers, and most mothers in particular, struggle with, is receiving, because they're out there giving and dishonoring themselves, and not allowing their own mothering, their own nurturing, their own restoration within themselves, their own inner connection, their own inner freedom, because they're out there trying to micromanage and control the process from this place of force and fear and stress, which is activating their sympathetic nervous system, which is meaning that they're not feeling safe within their bodies, which is meaning that, like, they're disconnected essentially and not available to the wisdom that's flowing through them at all times. And so our ability to just stop and drop and connect and open up to receiving, and being certain with the uncertainty, and flowing just with the gift that is alive and present within us, is one of the biggest gifts that we can give ourselves, and also our children, because it teaches them to trust and to feel safe in every single moment.
Ooh. It's so interesting. Like, it's such a beautiful journey, and it's one I've been on myself. And it's such an interesting journey, because at the core of it, it's like, we want what's best for our kids, right? We want what's best for humanity. We want what's best for everyone involved. But somehow we've gotten to this place where we think that means we have to be something different, or do something different, or somehow we need to be better than we are right now, when really the secret, if you want to call it a secret, or the hack, if you want to call it a hack, is really around actually giving ourselves permission to be fully more expressed who we are, to hold ourselves in that love that you were talking about, allowing ourselves to experience that. And that gives permission to everyone around us to do the same. And then, if that's what we're spreading through the world, all of a sudden you're surrounded with people who are the fully embodied, expressed versions of themselves. And we get to recognize each other in that, and hold space for each other in that, and really allow ourselves to be that. And that is freaking magical, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And you've kind of just paralleled, like, the world that I see is a world where we allow ourselves to activate the magic that's within us, to sprinkle basically that fairy dust of embodying who we truly are into the world. And in doing so, we are going to create a ripple effect that is going to positively impact and affect humanity for generations to come.
so beautiful. So beautiful. And it gets to be fun.
Well, the more fun it is, the easier it actually is. Even when it's like, I don't know, you're kind of like mid what feels like breakdown and crisis, identity crisis, or, you might be questioning whether you're going crazy in your mind. That's just our mind's limited perception and trying to control the experience that's actually flowing through our bodies. And so the more we can trust our bodies, the more that we can actually receive the feelings or receive what is flowing through us, while staying connected and grounded to our core essence and to our breath, so that we're not getting, all over the show with their emotions, or getting manipulated, by external sources, like always coming back to our center. Then the funner that is, and yes, the easier that is. And then we allow ourselves the gift of actually being within this multidimensional experience where there's so much duality. We have all parts within us, and so if we're not willing to actually look at those lower light parts of ourselves and actually be in acceptance of them, then they will control us. And then we'll act from that place of not wanting to receive those parts of ourselves, because we're not in acceptance that we own that part of ourselves too. And then we continuously reject ourselves rather than just allowing us to embrace and be all of who we are.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful experience when you start to go into, like, what does that really look like and mean to be allowing and accepting of the wholeness of who I am, even when it's messy. And I know for me, that was like a big thing most of my life, was like not letting people see the messy parts, looking like I was always put together, right? Like there was a point in my life where I was crying in the shower because I didn't want anybody to know how truly miserable I was when my life looked so amazing from the outside, right? And how selfish was it of me to want more, to want to actually feel good when I was, had an amazing husband and beautiful, healthy children and a good job, and like all of the things that you're told are supposed to make you happy, right? That you're supposed to, make you successful or whatever, when in reality, like, when you're forcing yourself to be someone you're not, to create externally, and not allowing yourself to really be in the messy parts, to allow yourself to feel the emotions, it like makes total logical sense that you don't feel good, right? Because you're not holding space for all of yourself. You're not allowing yourself to be, human and whole and all of that. And yeah, it's just a beautiful, beautiful experience. I would love it, because I feel like there are a lot of us in the world who are super disconnected from our bodies, by no accident, right?
Mm.
There are a lot of us running around in the world that maybe don't even know what it feels like to be connected to our bodies, because we spent so much time in our heads and so disconnected from our bodies. I would love if you would share, like, whatever feels really potent to share around embodiment, around integrating the different layers of self, around any of that, because I feel like this is such a big part of your magic too.
Hmm. So I feel like the thing to understand is that even when you're feeling like you don't know how, or you're feeling disconnected, you are connected to something. You are connected to the disconnection, or you're connected, or you're certain in the uncertainty. So to just acknowledge that whatever experience you're having, you're perfectly having it right now. Um, if you're being a really, in your eyes, really shitty mum, you're being a perfectly shitty mum right now. And so often what we do is we don't accept or receive what is actually in our experience right now. And so we reject it, we try and run away from it, we try and avoid it, we try and numb it, we try and distract ourselves with it, rather than just receiving what is and meeting that experience or that feeling or that thought with genuine curiosity, or just as it is, like just meeting it, just being like, okay. And the way that we can allow that to happen is through coming back to our breath. Now, the tricky thing is that most people don't actually understand how to breathe, because they've been so they've learned over time through different patterns and through different stresses and through different experiences to actually breathe from a very shallow place, rather than actually being able to come back and being like, okay, let me actually take a breath where I feel and expand into my belly. Now, even when I'm talking, like when I start talking really fast, there'll be moments where I'm not actually breathing either, and so there, as a speaker or as a facilitator, we are requiring a lot of our nervous systems and a lot of our adrenal systems and a lot from our hormonal systems in order to cultivate a space or an environment where our message can flow through us to activate other people. And so if we can simply acknowledge that and just be present, the more that we can connect with what is and accept what is, the more that we come back into this place of calmness and ease within us, because we're no longer trying to fight what is actually happening within our experience. When we're no longer trying to fight what's happening in our experience, then we can come back into that power, into that connection with our breath, and we can actually what I like to say, like, stop, drop, and connect. And when we connect, it's that opening up that portal to possibility within our body. It's coming back into that expansion. If we want to hack that, notice how often you find yourself into this like forward slumped posture, like even just sitting at a computer, or even just sitting down, or in a car, or even just standing. Like, we so often end up in these slumped postures, whether it's because our environment's not set up to really support us physically, which then induces chemicals and flow-on effects that activate different parts of our nervous system and reinforce to our brain that we're in stress, or whether it's because we're feeling emotions or things within our body and they're getting sent up to our brain, and our brain's trying to interpret that and make sense of it, and then we're having a response from that place. Like, it can be an either or kind of situation, like what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's kind of both working and interweaving between each other. But when we can open up our heart, particularly when we can open up our chest or our shoulders, squeeze our shoulder blades together, even look up, and then drop our shoulder blades down, and actually allow ourselves to take a breath that actually fills our stomach in that moment with whatever we're feeling, we're literally saying to our brain it's safe. We're literally saying to our brain that whatever is flowing through our experience right now, it's safe to receive that. Now, that can be true of something that feels intense, or that we might have labeled in the past as a more negative emotion that we've tried to run away from. Or the same can be true, like with an emotion that we've deemed or labeled to be positive. And either way, as humans, we often shut down both, because the more that we have the capacity to feel the bliss and the joy and the expansion and the abundance, the more we're also opening up capacity to be a channel for those other emotions to flow through us as well. And if we're not in full acceptance and receiving of all things, of the full spectrum of the human experience, from this place of being in love, in connection, in acceptance, in abundance, in groundedness, in just open-hearted receiving, for knowing that we are the creator of our experience, and that we don't receive anything that we don't have the capacity to handle, and that everything is this beautiful opportunity to open up more and activate more of our magic within us, then either way, we're rejecting both. So that was a very long-winded kind of explanation of, what I believe that means to me. But I feel like it's important to not just, everyone's heard, like, if you're stressed, take a breath, like, just breathe. And it's like, well, yes, but most people, when they breathe, are now at a point where they're so stuck within stress within their nervous system that they don't know how. And they actually haven't emptied the bucket of stress from their system in order to be actually able to feel. So anything that induces movement of our hips or our pelvis or shaking of our body will, or even like an increasing this tension within their body. So even sometimes, like for people who are really stressed or really tense, I will get them to like tense up more, hold their breath, and then let it go. Because what that does is it actually takes their system to a threshold, and then when they actually realize how intensely, how much tension they've been holding within their system, so that when they let that go, they actually are able to feel flow and expansion coming back into their body. So for some people, doing that before even taking a breath, or shaking or moving their pelvis or whatever it does that gets that movement and that life and that expansion happening, or that groundedness and connection happening within their body, is super important before we take our breath. Because if we're not connected to our body before we actually allow ourselves to breathe, then we're just reinforcing old patterns and programs.
Yeah, that is so good. And there's so much, long-winded was perfect because there's so much in there, so much juicy goodness in there that people can really take and activate in their own lives. Because one of the things that I'm personally committed to in all of the things I do and all the platforms I'm on is really giving people things that they can actually do, small little things that aren't little, but small little things that they can activate in their own life to really start to shift um, some of the things that have been stuck within them. Because I know for me, early on in my journey, when I was in a bad place. I was in a really bad place. Um, and I just needed the little things. I needed the little things that people would spell out for me, or that I would read in a book or whatever, that I could go, okay, 1, 2, 3, follow these steps. I can do that much. Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's true even at this point in my journey that there are times where it's really obviously the thing to just go back to what seem to be the simple things. And like you were saying in the beginning, right? Like we sometimes we overcomplicate things so much and we make it so much harder than it needs to be. And
Yeah.
I think just being able to breathe is a pretty important thing that most of us don't realize we're not even doing, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Simplicity always wins
Yeah.
every time. And you know, sometimes we have this need to understand the complexity and the depth of everything, so that we can bring it back to simplicity, so we can really understand how simple it actually is, and that nature needs no help. Our natural essence needs no help to shine. It simply just requires no interference. And
Yeah.
so where are we running interference within our life? Where are we allowing interference to impede the natural flow of communication, or the natural flow of life force vitality or abundance, or anything that is our birthright to experience? We were all born with these divine gifts within us, and the more we allow ourselves to truly embrace those and simply just be okay with being who we are, the more magical and fun and also simple life becomes.
So beautiful. So beautiful. I love
Mm.
it so much. Ah, Miss Tammy, this has been fantastic. I knew this conversation was going to be epic, and there's so much good stuff in here. And I really just appreciate you so much coming on and sharing your magic with the rest of us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's always such a um, powerful experience getting to collaborate and co-create with you, and I just enjoy. Yeah, I enjoy every single time we have a conversation. I'm like, I wonder where this is going to go.
Me too. It's funny because this podcast, while I'm, as you know, I'm very motivated to spread love and spread light and help people in any way that I can. It's also very selfishly motivated because I just love having excuses for having conversations like this with people I love. So good. So good. For people who are looking to connect with you, to work with you, to follow you, to be in your space, is there anything you'd love to share?
Yeah, you're super welcome to connect with me on Facebook or Instagram. My handles are Tammy Jane McKenzie. I won't give you my website because it's currently undergoing some beautiful rebirthing.
Yay!
So you'll go to a blank page at the moment. But yeah, if you want to be connected to my space, please, search me out, follow me, come into my Facebook group where I just really share the truth of what's coming through me and the remembrance of my journey and the embodiment of who I am. I'm not here to be anyone other than myself anymore, and so every part of my journey is just a natural unfolding or a natural remembering or activating of who I've always been before I
Oh,
forgot.
yes. So good. Thank you for that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work you're doing in the world. And thank you for being the embodiment and a permission slip for the rest of us to really, truly start to step into remembering who we are as well. It's just such important work that you're doing. And I really, truly appreciate it personally and professionally and for humanity in general.
Thank you so much. I received that fully.
Yay! So good. And for you guys listening, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I really appreciate every one of you. I hope you found value in the show. And if you did, please go ahead and rate, review, subscribe. And until next time, please remember to let your inner rebel come out to play. I love you so much. Mwah!